Hey, what's up, everybody? Ryan Kostrowski, Matthew Bellman, and we have our guest Andrew here from NBA Overview. We'll keep it simple, guys. We're here to talk a little NBA. We're going to address a few subjects, have a little fun, follow along, and let's have a good time.
Man, Ryan, me and you go back and forth like all day, every day. I mean, you guys see it on the videos, but even besides that, going back and forth, it's nice to have another, fresh mind on it that will probably agree with me because you're always wrong.
Oh.
You'd like to think so, Matt. I feel like watching Stephen A. and Max Kellerman for a few minutes today, Matt. We're like them, where you're very emotional like Stephen A., and then I'm just always like giving you numbers like Max Kellerman, and then just go back and forth and get after one another. Either way, it's a lot of fun.
Sure is.
All right, so first things first, and this should hit both of you guys right at home, because Matt, you are a Cleveland guy, and Andrew, you are. You said your whole family's from Cleveland, so you guys both like the Cavs. And my question is, what do we make out of LeBron James' legacy? Andrew, you said you guys just wrote a piece about this week.
Yeah.
What does this year mean for him, in your opinion?
So we're actually about to come out with it. It's gonna debut at like 2:00, I think. I think we have to be really careful just throwing away LeBron's career because he's making mistakes in LA. And I think obviously if you follow any of LA Twitter, they're kind of just lighting him on fire right now. But I think there's a multitude of different reasons this season has gone bad for LA. First of all, they have played, I believe it's 11 games with a healthy roster. So that means they haven't had Lonzo, they haven't had Kuzma, LeBron's missed time, Josh Hart has missed a significant amount of time. A lot of people are sleeping on Josh Hart. He was supposed to be the best Laker around LeBron this year. He was shooting 40% from the three-point line last year. And due to injuries and inconsistent playing time, I think it's like 32% this year. He's terrible. So there's, first of all, injuries killed them. Second of all, I don't think Luke Walton is a good coach. Now, I'm not on the Lakers train where they're like, he's trash. I think he's a solid coach, but I think the biggest part of being a coach in the NBA is having the respect of your players. And I think LeBron and Rondo, those guys don't respect Walton. And so in turn, the young guys like Kuzma, Hart, and Ingram, and then the guys that could go both ways like KCP and Reggie Bullock, they don't respect Luke Walton either. So the offense is a mess. They're not running real sets. They're kind of just coming down the floor and chucking stuff up. I do think that the AD trade hurt chemistry. And I think it actually hurt chemistry of someone who no one's talking about. And I think it was JaVale McGee. Because if you think about it, like Kuzma and Ingram are having their best months after the trade deadline. It's almost like they embraced, okay, if you guys don't want us, cool, fine. We don't have to worry about it. But JaVale, he's like, man, they're trying to replace me. I think they traded Zubats away because JaVale was frustrated. And if you look at JaVale's numbers this season, he started the year at like a +5, and in mid-December, he was like a +10. When they beat Golden State in that time frame, he was a +10, box plus minus. Every month after that has decreased. So I think it was -3 and then -7, and it's like -15 right now. I don't think JaVale cares. I don't think he wants to play for LA anymore. And at the beginning of the year, he was averaging like 3.8 blocks a game when he first came in. And like there were people that were legitimate basketball fans who are like, hey, he might be the defensive player of the year this year. And he's just literally tailed off. So I think the AD trade actually really hurt JaVale. And that was like a key part because obviously JaVale's he's not changing anything. But I think he's a big part of what the Lakers are trying to do. And if they could get consistent minutes out of him, then it would be incredible. But
let me hop in here real quick because I want to just address what we talked about with JaVale. So sure. I don't disagree with your points. In fact, I think a lot of them are right on point. The one thing I'll say about JaVale, though, and while I don't disagree with it, shame on him if he can't get over that. I mean, this is a veteran in the league.
Sure.
They never were even talking about trading him. He signed a 1-year deal. They're not trying to build around him anyways. Shame on him if he can't get over that. And while I don't disagree with you, I think ultimately you're hitting on the point of the Lakers' problems this year, and that's how they decided to build around LeBron.
Definitely.
LeBron has proven time and time again he's the best player in the league, et cetera, et cetera. But he's also proven he's not the best GM. He doesn't pick pieces around him as well as you think he might. And this year is a great example of it.
That's actually a classic problem with really great athletes is they feel like they know the best part of the GM and how to build around themselves. And you can harken that back to the Miami Heat. That was a lot of talent with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and LeBron, but they were never a good fit. None of them were good shooters. None of them were, sizable enough to play on the inside. None of them were actual point guards. They were all really good in their own right, but it never really made sense for the three of them to be together.
Agreed. As far as his legacy goes, though, I actually think this will just be a blip on the radar, except if this continues and, next year they don't make the playoffs, et cetera, which I have a hard time believing. I mean, LeBron James, and I feel a type of way because I'm born and raised in Cleveland. He went to a high school 20 minutes away from me, saw him in high school. I've known about him forever. I mean, to me, he's the 1A to Michael Jordan's 1. And I don't think this year is changing that at all to me. He was hurt. Let's not forget that he's also 34 years old.
Yeah.
The point I like in there is I think it's still yet to be seen. And you brought up LA Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of fair weather fans out there. Let's let people be prisoners of the moment. We know how
they hated LeBron going in anyways because they're all Kobe guys.
That's true. So true.
Yeah, let's see what happens next year before we really vilify this guy. So being a Green Bay resident and a huge Packer fan, watching the entire world jump all over Aaron Rodgers this year. I mean, this guy had a serious injury week 1 and had to play with the worst coach in football for the rest of the year. Let's see what happens next year. And if they both continue to get worse, it is going to stain both of their legacies.
And I've brought this up to you before, Ryan, and I think this is a very simplistic way to look at it. Look at the Cavs now without LeBron James. I know I talked to you earlier. The Cavs are capable and adequate with Kevin Love, but they're not a playoff team or close to it. LeBron James took this exact team to the NBA Finals last year.
Oh man, that was rough, dude. That was a rough finals.
It was a rough finals, but I think, and Ryan, you make this point all the time. People want to discredit LeBron for losing that finals. Is that a joke?
Yeah.
I think it's a joke. I think LeBron should get more credit for bringing bad teams to the finals. Now, I do really believe in your point, though. He's been a bad GM, and he's done a bad job of creating teams around him that would best utilize what he's capable of doing. LeBron is best with the ball in his hand creating plays. That's what I love about my Milwaukee Bucks right now. They built around Giannis. Yes, there is no quote-unquote superstar next to Giannis, but they filled that roster with B players who can shoot from three-point range, who will play defense, who will play as a team. It's what I've been saying they should be doing with Westbrook for the last 5 years.
It's more like B-plus players also.
Yeah, fill the team with shooters and just keep the ball in his hand, but have guys that will play defense and shoot. If you built a roster around LeBron like that, which there's no shooting in LA, they would be a lot better.
I don't get it. And, I talked to you about this a lot, Ryan, and then I'll let you go ahead.
Sure.
Rondo's fine, and I like him on a playoff type of environment, but they have Lonzo Ball, who is, a Rondo clone for better or worse purposes. I don't agree with a lot of the moves they've made in the offseason. I know they wanted to sign a lot of these guys to one-year deals. It hasn't worked, and they're really, paying the price. And I think a lot of these guys, starting with Luke Walton, up a little bit and down a little bit, are going to be out of jobs.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing I do want to address is you have written on there LeBron, the 4th seed before groin injury. If you've watched LeBron any time for the past 10 years, you know that the current LeBron that's playing right now is not the best LeBron.
Right.
Like, the current LeBron that's playing right now is not healthy LeBron either. And when LeBron is in the playoffs, there is no one that can stop him, and that's just a fact. So I understand that he is getting old, and I think that's a part of it. But his jump at the beginning of the year, he was so good outside. His outside game was so good. If you watched the game last night, I don't know if he hit a 3. He might have hit 1. But teams don't have to guard him because he's struggling with the groin injury. And you could even see last night he got hit one time when he was like grimacing and he was grabbing his leg. The funny part about LeBron James is that he's hurt right now, and he's averaging 28, 7, and 6, I think. And he's still incredible. And one other thing I wanted to point out, I think with the whole MJ LeBron debate, and this is actually in our article for today, we can appreciate both, right? Like, yes. I'm all for comparisons. I love comparing them. I'm saying finals records, we can appreciate both, right? Like, LeBron went to the finals 9 years in a row. I'm pretty positive he's the only one to ever do that, right? 9 years in a row. That's incredible. Can we appreciate that? Michael Jordan never lost the big game. He never lost in the finals. Like, I feel like we can appreciate both of those without saying, all right, MJ won 6 times, because I would make the argument that he played worse competition. But but then people say, oh, well, LeBron, he lost all the time. And like, so MJ never lost, which is awesome. And LeBron made it 9 times. Like, both of those are incredible feats that no one has ever done.
That's just the society we live in, right? Like, always, who's better, who's worse. I completely agree with you. To appreciate both. There doesn't need to be a better, a 1 or a 2. And quite honestly, no one can ever, in finality, prove that one's better than the other anyways.
Sure, we talk about that all the time, and we talk about it with, Brady versus Rodgers. Do you really believe that if Aaron Rodgers played all those seasons in New England, he wouldn't have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 championships? And it's the same thing right here. And I agree with your point. Michael Jordan didn't really ever beat anybody in the finals. I'm not saying that's his fault. He didn't really have to play anybody. But tell me the championship team that he beat. He never went and beat a Golden State. Again, he can only beat who was put in front of him. And I had some clown a few months ago trying to tell me, well, yeah, he took out the Hall of Famers, Karl Malone and John Stockton. I'm like, congratulations. Those dudes played 15 years together and made it to the finals twice. Is that supposed to be some sort of like major accomplishment?
I think you're poo-pooing who they played a little bit. I mean, those teams never won titles because of Michael Jordan. I don't think that
also never went more than twice.
Okay, well, I mean, a lot of teams don't go to finals more than twice. I mean, for me, it's like, I'm not saying that Utah team is the best team ever, but you do have 2 Hall of Famers there. The Seattle team, very similarly with Kemp and Peyton, Phoenix with Charles Barkley. Those teams aren't like Golden State, but no team is like Golden State.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I feel pretty strongly that none of those teams are to the caliber of the fact that he had to play the Golden State Warriors. He had to play the Spurs on multiple occasions. These are all significantly better dynasty type of teams than anything Michael ever had to go up against. And I still think Michael Jordan's better. I just hate when people, the Michael Jordan jock riders, who think Michael is like the supreme god and that LeBron is trash in comparison. No, you can say Michael's better, but he ain't better by leaps and bounds.
No, yeah, it's definitely an argument that will take forever to talk about. So why don't we move on to the next question?
Because you can't, yeah, you're right. You can never definitively say who is better. Last thing we'll address on LeBron, though. Is he hit a physical wall? Is this just a blip in the road? And do you think next year we see him back to getting back into the conversation as the best player in basketball right now?
I think so, but I think the real answer to that is TBD, right? We don't know the answer to that.
Yep, that's why we're just guessing. How about you?
So LeBron's training regimen is like insane. It's like a statistic. He puts like so much millions of dollars into his body every year. And he actually works out for like 3 hours before games. The groin injury hit his workout load really hard. So he hasn't been able to do the physical things that he normally does. And his training regimen actually builds him towards the playoffs. That's one of the reasons he's so good in the playoffs. So I think I don't think he's hit a physical wall. I don't think he's going to be – I think he'll be better next year. I think this groin injury was something we've always said could happen to LeBron. If LeBron gets hurt, like, he's not going to be as good, right? And it happened to Jordan, and that's why end of his career with the Magic, I think he got hurt. But I don't think it's a physical wall. I think it's an injury he's battling through. It's messed up his training regimen. He has very weak players around him. And, yeah.
The one thing I will say, though, is Father Time is undefeated.
It's true. You're right. Yeah.
And I just think it's good
and good. So
I was just saying, I think it's good to know that I have something in common with LeBron James. He puts millions of dollars into his body. So do I. I just do it in the form of whiskey and cookies. So it's a little bit different. All right, moving along. So who is the best in the East? Now, I wear it on my sleeve. Everybody here knows that I am a Wisconsin resident. I'm a big-time Bucks fan. It is nice because I'm a 38-year-old man, and the Milwaukee Bucks have given me very, very little to cheer about throughout the entirety of almost 4 decades. The exception being, a small run to the Eastern Conference Finals, taking on AI and the 76ers way back with Ray Allen, Big Dog, and things like that. So, not falling victim to the last couple of games where they've hit a rough patch. Who is the best team in the East? You guys know my answer. Matt, I think I know your answer, so I'm going to take a look at you, Andrew. As an outsider, who do you think is the best team in the East?
Dude, I wrote a piece on this. 2 months ago about how the Celtics are going to win. I wrote another piece called Who's the Best in the East and completely changed my mind to the Bucks. And I think that's the one you read. And then, dude, the Sixers and Raptors are both so good. So here's what I think is going to happen. So my problem with Giannis and the Bucks, and we can go on with this, is like you said, he doesn't have. Dude, Giannis reminds me of LeBron, early LeBron, times 1,000, literally. So LeBron was not bad those years, and the teams won 60 games every year because we put players around LeBron. The problem was he could never close because in the playoffs, everything gets harder. Defenses get more defenses ramp up, players play harder, and those guys like Donyell Marshall and Eric Snow and Antawn Jamison, they couldn't up their game.
So agreed, man.
That's what scares me about the Bucks, dude. Like,
agreed, because just to take they're gonna go all under screens on Giannis. They're gonna give him so much room to shoot. And Ryan, I know it hasn't been an issue in the regular season, but just like Andrew was saying, playoffs are a different game. That is by far my biggest hesitation with Milwaukee, the fact they haven't won a playoff series. If you're asking me who the best team in the East is right now, it's Milwaukee because they have the best record. Yeah. Are they going to win the East? I love where you're going, Andrew. So honestly, first thing, with the Raptors, every single year for the past 4 years, we've seen Kyle Lowry's inability to take his game to the next level. He doesn't do anything different. His game doesn't improve. In fact, sometimes it deteriorates because defenses get better at guarding him. But I would say I think Kawhi's got a more complete game right now than Giannis, and the one big thing Kawhi has on Giannis is experience. Kawhi's been there. He's guarded LeBron in the finals. He's won a finals MVP. This Eastern Conference playoffs is not going to be anything pressure-wise that he's not dealt with. 2 years ago, as the 8th seed, Kawhi got hurt in that game in Golden State, and people were saying that San Antonio was going to beat Golden State that year.
Yeah, he's so good. And I think he might be able to help Kyle Lowry increase his game because it's going to get easier. The problem with DeMar's not a modern NBA player. DeMar would be great in the 90s, but we don't shoot mid-range twos in the 2000s. So I think the problem with the Raptors is, although Siakam is good, Siakam is really good. And I wasn't as high on him until I watched him play the Celtics. And he's a great defender. He runs the floor. He gets rebounds. And I think he can shoot threes now too, which is just perfect for him. The Sixers have the best starting five. I think the problem is with the same with Giannis. The sag on Ben Simmons is just out of the world. Like, players play him at the free throw line. He can be at half court. They're guarding him at the free throw line. And I don't think they can do anything. The other big weakness they have is JJ Redick is so hard to keep on the floor in the playoffs because Giannis, they'll just run through screens until they have JJ Redick on Giannis, and then you're done. You have to hide.
Whoa! You don't think Redick can guard Giannis?
No,
Ryan. I'd like to hear how you'd counter the argument that I know that you can't have experience until you have experience. But Are you worried at all about Milwaukee in the playoffs? Because, like Andrew said, everything gets harder.
So I do think the X factors are actually both up in this picture right here. And it's the two guys named Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Middleton, who are also very capable of creating their own shots. Middleton, his nickname is Chris Money Middleton because he hits big shot after big shot. Now, he didn't do that last night. He was awful last night against Phoenix. But if you're telling me where does the ball go with 17 seconds left to go, Milwaukee's got a tie game. They're in Boston, they're in Toronto, wherever it might need to be. Chris Middleton can create his own shot at will. He's got that turnaround like Kobe, obviously not to that kind of a level. He hits big threes when they count. And Malcolm Brogdon continues to be, to me, one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA. And to counter the experience point, yes, Kawhi's got some championship experience. Been a few years, though. And not like this Raptors team has much experience winning. So, yeah, Milwaukee doesn't have experience, but there really isn't anybody in the Eastern Conference right now who has any version of great experience that they can lean on. So it's a problem for everybody.
This is definitely true. And I think ultimately because these teams are so close, you can make arguments for seriously all of them, all four of them. They're all four, really good teams. I guess the Celtics are the one that are falling out right now. And to me, it's going to be between the Bucks and the Raptors because I don't like what Philly has behind their starting five.
So let's take a step back, actually, because I think we're going to all get to the same conclusion. And then let's dissect it a little bit further there. And can we all agree, this Boston Celtic team has issues. And I just don't see them. I think they might be able to beat Philly in round one if they match up because they beat Philly every time they get together. But other than that, I just cannot see the Celtics teams getting to the finals. I just can't see it. Does anybody disagree with that?
Dude, Jason Tatum is cancerous, bro.
So is Kyrie right now.
Yeah.
Listen, for me, I don't think they're going to make the finals. But if you're telling me that they could beat Philly, then if they do beat Philly, then we're telling a different story about Boston then at that point than we are right now.
Yeah, that's true. So I actually think Kyrie's cancerous, but you have to deal with Kyrie, man, because Kyrie is the only guy that's going to stare the other dude on Boston right now. It's going to stare down the other team's best player and say, I'm going to go right at you and I'm going to score. I'm going to score on you and you can't stop me. Kyrie's like NBA superstars have this mode that they can go into sometimes where just no one can stop them. There is no one on the Celtics that can do that except for Kyrie. You have to live with Kyrie. Potential in the modern NBA is so overrated. We're still waiting for Andrew Wiggins to be good. He's not good, right? But with Jason Tatum, the Celtics, in my opinion, and this is a little off topic, but ship him out for AD this summer, dude. You never know if Tatum is going to develop. He's averaging, 14 a game right now? AD, you know what you're getting, right? And he could get better. So I think the big problem with the Celtics is that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum don't want to be role players. They want to be stars, which is awesome. But Al Horford and Kyrie are the guys running the show, and they need to fit into that system. They don't need to try to carve their own way. Neither of them are good enough to average 20 a game. So, and Tatum, if you look at Tatum's shot selection, it's one of the worst in the NBA. He takes more long twos than anyone else. So I think Jason Tatum needs to stop trying to play like Kobe and play like a modern 3-and-D. If he could play some 3-and-D, he would be so good, man.
I like what you said about they want to be stars. Well, I want to bang Mila Kunis, but these things really they can't just automatically be true just because you want them to be
But
true.
you understand where they're coming from, though, and that's the dilemma because these guys went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year without Kyrie and without Hayward. And that ultimately goes back to, Ryan, what we were talking about before the show. The Celtics are in a bad spot, in my opinion, and hamstrung a little bit for the future, unless they can make that deal for AD because of Gordon Hayward. Hayward is a shell of himself, and I know it's a lot of it just because of injury. But do we honestly think that he's going to come back next year and be like an all-star player? Because I certainly don't. And he's making the most money on the team. That's the problem.
I think we don't know how long it's going to take. He might not come back. It took Paul George 2 years to come back. So
he's just not that type of player, though. Like, he's very good, but he's not a Paul George type player.
Yeah, he was underrated athletically before he got hurt. But yeah, he doesn't have Paul George's ceiling, no.
And I agree with that. He was a little bit underrated, and I liked the move when he eventually went to Boston, leaving Utah. But the problem is now, and because of injury, for better or for worse, I mean, they couldn't give him away.
No, because Boston's going to have issues because Kyrie's gone. And so this leaves, like you talked about shipping Tatum for AD. I mean,
he's not staying there.
Yeah, that's true.
What's that?
I would have pulled.
He's not staying there. They can't trade for AD without Kyrie. They're in a bad spot.
No, they're going to have to trade like Tatum and Brown. And then all you have is Anthony Davis and Gordon Hayward. Now you're just not that good.
And Anthony Davis isn't going to stay there. So then you're just ultimately back at your building around Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And I agree with your point. Potential is very overrated. Those guys might be very good one day, but do either of us think that those guys are going to be like perennial all-stars, MVP type players? Because I don't.
Yeah, I don't get the Jason Tatum love fest. I get that he could be great, but people start talking about him this year like that the Boston is like a clear-cut, no doubt going to make it.
He dunked on LeBron one time and everyone lost their minds.
Right?
Yeah, like based on what made you think that? Oh, Boston's got the most talent. Do you really think, and I'll just take my bucks out of it because I don't want to be a homer. You really think that Boston has more talent than Toronto? Like how? I don't see where you come up with this.
Yeah, they don't know.
But Ryan, going back to just the Bucks, because I do agree with your point, more on Brogdon than Middleton.
Yeah.
I think Brogdon is getting majorly slept on. This guy was a 4 years, really good college player at Virginia, has translated very well into the NBA, knows his role. I don't think you can understate his importance to Milwaukee.
So they also tried something the other day against Utah, and I think they had like a +30 when they ran this lineup.
Supersize.
Yes, Brook Lopez, Giannis, Chris Middleton at 6'8" on the point. You throw out Ersan and Nikola Mirotic. And there's the X factor that the Bucks have with guys like Mirotic, who is going to get red hot 2 or 3 times in the playoffs and win you games. Ersan Ilyasova does all the dirty stuff that you need out of a player come playoff time, taking charges, offensive rebounds. He can spread the floor. And that's where people say it tightens up in the playoffs, and you're right. But that still doesn't mean that Giannis, who leads the league by a distant margin on assisted three-pointers, because everybody on the Bucks can shoot threes at a high level, with the exception of Giannis and Eric Bledsoe, who's okay at it.
No, the team is built exactly like an early Cavs team, or even a 2014, 2015 Cavs team. Sorry, not 14, but the 14-15 season Cavs team. The problem I have with the Bucks, man, is I don't honestly know how good Chris Middleton really is. And I haven't spent a ton of time watching him. I actually just looked Malcolm Brogdon's stats up, and he's coming off the bench, right?
Nope, Brogdon starts.
He starts?
Yep.
Okay, I thought he came off of the bench against LA. But, yeah, 16 points a game, 93% from the free throw line, 43% from three. Like, those are really, really good numbers.
Yeah, he's 40-40-90.
Oh, is he? Okay.
40-50-90.
That's crazy. Do you see him elevating his game for the playoffs?
Why not? Yeah. Here's my question. I agree with you that we don't know the answer to that, but until you've done it, we can't, like, you're right. Like, we've never seen him do it because he's never been given the opportunity.
Sure. That's a good point.
And we can argue that, but that goes for every team in the East right now. And that's where it
goes for every team ever.
Well, not the Warriors, though. You know what I mean? Like, we know who they are right now. But yes, exactly. But it goes for every team in the East currently constructed. I mean, you could bring in Kawhi's experience, but it's been years now. And this Toronto team hasn't won anything together ever.
I agree, man.
They've been there, though. Like, they've been in the conference finals. Like, they played LeBron team. Like, the LeBron team from 2017 would wipe the floor with anybody in the East. Can we agree on that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What?
Which LeBron team? I didn't catch you.
The 2017 team. Statistically, It's the best one. The one with Kyrie, Korver, LeBron, Tristan. It's the year after we won the championship. Statistically, we were offensively better. It's like the fourth best offensive team of all time, by the way. The problem is that Golden State that year was like number one. So, but anyways, I don't know. If I had to take a team today, I would probably take the Bucks, but I might be kicking myself for not taking Kawhi because he's been there.
I get that, man. I feel very similarly to you, and that goes back to what I said. I think the Bucks are the best team in the East, but I don't think that it's like any sort of guarantee they're winning the East or anything.
Not at all. And I think we all agree that the Pacers, as much as we want to give them credit for playing above their heads, they got no shot, right?
I think they win their first series.
Depends who they play, right?
Yeah, against whoever they play. Well, so, Miles Turner, underrated, man. He's averaging almost 3 blocks.
He's in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. The only thing I'll say about Indiana is that Orlando is just as good as Indiana right now. And those teams just aren't ready to take on teams like Milwaukee and Toronto. With Oladipo, it might be a different story.
Definitely, yeah. They're not beating any of the top 4 we just listed, but I think they can beat anyone else that's in the Eastern Conference, and they could honestly probably steal a game from one of those top teams.
Oh, yeah. And Ryan, a point that I think you'll like about Indiana, and this is kind of how I look at them, but we always talk about the discrepancies between the top of the East and the bottom of the East. not even the bottom of the East, the bottom playoff teams. I think Indiana is closer to the Milwaukee and Torontos of the world.
Agreed.
Than they are the Charlotte Brooklyns of the world.
Oh, no doubt about it. My problem with them winning their first round game is they might be the 4 seed and have to play the Celtics, or they might have to play the 76ers or something like that.
Who do you have right now, Ryan? Pacers or Celtics?
Celtics. I'd have to go with the Celtics, but I do think that the Pacers would push them.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now we get down to the Raptors and the Bucks. I kind of feel like that's where we were headed. They got the top 2 records. I think a lot of the talk about how the Raptors will really be able to hold on the Bucks goes both ways. Milwaukee has the number 1 rated defense. They have the length, the speed, and the size, and they have given the Raptors fits this year when it comes to be able to score points. There was 2 separate games this year where Toronto just could not find a way when the Milwaukee chose to buckle down on them defensively, because the Bucks have a very good defensive team. Brook Lopez is extremely underrated on the defensive end of it. Speaking of throwing a block party lately, he's right there. Giannis is the number 1 rated defensive player in the league. Chris Middleton, who was a D3 guy earlier in his year, he is a very good defender. Eric Bledsoe is one of the top defending point guards, and Malcolm Brogdon plays great defense. So they have a lot of ways they can shut them down.
Ryan, you had made a point before about how Toronto, we haven't talked on this in a while, Toronto hadn't beat any good teams. How is that since then?
I haven't looked.
Okay.
So I know they, nice win Friday night against the Blazers. Not that they're like an upper echelon team, but I think you talked about the Raptors beat Golden State twice this year, but they were missing guys both times, right?
Yeah.
One time they were missing Curry. One time they were missing Durant.
Okay, so it's hard to really translate those things. And also, Toronto has laid a few games down by just not playing Kawhi. So I do think Toronto and Milwaukee are really even. In the 4 games they played, though, this year, Milwaukee looked substantially like the better team in 3 of them. And then Toronto won 1 of them, and, they got hot from 3-point range.
One thing I'll say, Ryan, and then we can move on, and I know you've touched on this a lot, and I've been watching for it. Giannis is like a different beast. Like, you can tell, like, I don't know if you saw his first dunk last night, but the look on his face after, like, no one's fucking with this guy. So I could see him just going beast mode and no one's stopping him.
He's a physical freak. So, all right. This kind of leads into our last and final subject is, can anyone beat Golden State this year? And we'll start with the first question. Who is your most likely candidate that if you had to bet on one team to take them out on the West? I know your answer, Matt, and I know my answer. So, Andrew, I'm going to look at you. If you could pick one team that you had to bet all the money on to beat them in the Western Conference, who would it be?
If the team doesn't have LeBron, they don't have a shot. But since you want me to pick one, I'll go with I'm really low on James Harden. He's probably my least favorite basketball player to watch. But as far as the team to pick, I'd probably go with OKC.
That's the only team to pick, in my opinion.
They're so long, and they can all shoot now, which is new. They've never been able to do that before. By the way, Paul George is the perfect player to play next to Russell Westbrook. He never needs the ball to score, and he is a monster defensively. Like, there's a stat on tipped passes. Paul George is leading the league by like 5. It's like he just gets more tipped passes than anyone else. So I think OKC. Also, Billy Donovan's a good coach, but no one's beating Golden State. I think OKC could steal a game from. Well, I think OKC will steal a game from them or 2 because Golden State's gonna be lazy and stupid. I didn't think the Rockets really had a shot last year. I think Golden State came out lazy and they got beat, and all of a sudden their backs are up against the wall. And they could have almost lost it, but I think as far as potential wise, like they were way better than the Rockets, and they're way better than anyone else that they're going to play this year.
Well, the Rockets were a Chris Paul injury away from probably winning that series.
Yeah, theoretically they were. The problem is that Chris Paul didn't play. And the other thing that really bugs me about sorry, I lost my train of thought. But anyways, talking about Golden State, like, they've always been so good that you can't leave anyone. And last year and the year before that, it was like, is Iggy kind of dying? Like, what's happening? So now they can play Steph, Clay, Draymond, Durant, and DeMarcus Cousins, and you actually can't leave anyone. Like, they can play – teams are, like, sagging off Draymond now and making him shoot threes. You can sag off Draymond, and they can play him at the 5 with 4 shooters around him because DeMarcus Cousins is so good. I don't think there's a team in the last history of basketball
in the last history of basketball. I love that
has ever had like this many good players. Like the Warriors have 2. Forget all the other guys. The Warriors have 2 MVPs who are in their prime. I don't know if that's been on any other team. 2 MVPs in their prime. I know there was. Did Karl Malone and John Stockton both win MVP?
John Stockton, I don't think won one.
Okay, there's a team in the 90s and 80s that had 2 because I looked it up. I can't remember.
Probably maybe Houston with Olajuwon and Drexler.
That's who it was. But I don't think both of them were in their primes, and definitely not in the middle. Like, Durant is still awesome, and so is Steph. So like, and then Klay Thompson's like one of the best shooters, and Draymond's a great defender. So the team that they have constructed is just it's ridiculous, and legitimately they did get lucky because they were going to cut Draymond, and Steph was hurt all the time.
All the time.
Literally 5 years.
I remember in fantasy drafts, it was like, I don't even want him because how long is he going to even last in the league? Because he couldn't get his ankles right.
Yeah, and it was like Derrick Rose.
Seriously.
Literally, yeah.
About OKC, and I'll just jump in here. And
sure.
I don't think they're going to beat Golden State. But, Ryan, we talk about this a lot. We feel very similarly about this. And I'll just go to your point about Milwaukee. OKC has experience. People forget that Paul George took the Pacers to the Eastern Conference Finals. He battled with LeBron. They weren't going to win those series, but he battled. Westbrook is Westbrook. Say what you will. Like you mentioned, George is a perfect fit next to them. next to him. I really like what they've done with their roster with Schroeder, Jeremy Grant, etc. They're just not quite good enough. And in a normal year, they'd be finals contenders, maybe favorites. But Golden State is just too good, in my opinion.
Golden State's starting five is the best starting five in history. I don't even think that's like even up for debate. It is unquestionably, in my mind, the most talented starting five we have ever seen. And I actually think it's by a pretty good margin. Like, yeah, Michael Jordan's great, but the guys around him, like Bill Cartwright is not DeMarcus Cousins. Sorry, like there's a big discrepancy between where they go. And I like Tony Kukoc, but Tony Kukoc was never Klay Thompson even or up to that level. So this team is the best. Where I do think there is an outside shot for a team to knock them off this year. And again, I want to preface this by saying that Golden State, it was without question the favorites in any single series that they're going to be in. No questions about it. That's not up for debate either. Is one, how hungry are they? I think there could be lapses on Golden State, and we've seen it from time to time, where another team could pull out a game or two that you wouldn't normally expect them to win. And then you throw in another game where maybe Paul George goes insane and goes 9 of 10 from three-point range. Because we all agree that Oklahoma City is our top prospect to beat them. But there could be a game where Paul George gets red hot. They win that one. Another game where Russell Westbrook actually makes his three-pointers. Now they've won 2 games. Another game where Golden State just shits the bed and doesn't try. Well, now all of a sudden there's a third game that Oklahoma City's won, and we're getting down to a game 7. Who's hungrier, Paul George and Russell Westbrook, or a team who's been there every year over and over again?
That's a great point. And the other point I'm sure you're going to get to is about their bench.
Their bench sucks.
Their bench sucks, and they're really shallow. The only kind of counter argument to that is it doesn't really matter because you never play any back-to-backs in the playoffs. Those guys are going to play all the run that they need to play. And I wouldn't even be surprised if they blow out a team a couple times and those guys get some extra rest then.
For sure. Although I think we've been looking for that all year, and Golden State has not been blowing out that many people.
That's because they don't care.
Yeah, it's regular season, and I hate this because I know, Ryan, you would roll your eyes at me and send me the Harden gif if I said this to you, but I'll back up what Andrew said. Any team that doesn't have LeBron really doesn't have a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, you can say he didn't play, but they were a Chris Paul injury away, and they still were competitive in that game, even though the Rockets shot 0 of 1,000 from three-point range. I do think that there's a better opportunity, even though with the addition of Cousins, they are more talented. I think this is the year they are most likely to go down since KD has got there.
And talent also isn't everything. Like this team, and that's my one thing I'll get on board with you. Like Cousins is amazing, and I love Cousins. He's a fantasy monster. He puts up stats with the best of them. But they didn't need that. And I've mentioned this to you a ton, Ryan. Cousins is the type of guy that always thinks he's the best player on the floor, for better or for worse, because he almost always is. We love that for fantasy purposes. But are they going to love that in a 3-point game in the fourth quarter with 4 minutes left?
Third point, impending free agency. And we've already seen this team get into a little bit of a tizzy fit earlier in this year when Draymond started calling out KD. I think most of us believe KD might be gone after this year. I think there's a good shot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that Klay leaves, but he's out there. Cousins might be gone. This team, if all of a sudden palms get sweaty, because they haven't been sweaty in the playoffs for years. You know what I mean? They haven't been tested in the playoffs for 2 straight seasons. They have just flown through. What if all of a sudden one of these teams who's improved, Oklahoma City, Houston, even the Nuggets or the Jazz, start pushing them, and then they start questioning each other, and now they start bickering like a couple of little schoolgirls, and all of a sudden things aren't as easy. We've never seen KD come up big in games where his palms were supposed to be sweaty. He choked a lot for Oklahoma City. It's the reason he's on Golden State right now.
That's true, man.
It's easy to front run. It's easy to play well when you have 3 other like future Hall of Famers around you and you're up by 15 points. Anybody can show off right there. What happens when all of a sudden Kevin Durant's got Paul George on him down by 1 with 12 seconds to go, and one of the top on-ball defenders is right there? Does KD make that shot? I don't know that he does.
So I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with you on KD never hitting big shots, because I actually watched him bury my Cavs in 2017 with a top of the 3 dagger that broke my heart. But also, to answer your question, yes, I agree. So the whole drama thing it happens with a lot of great teams. But the thing is, at the end of the day, basketball is much about math. And when you put Steph Curry and Kevin Durant into pick and roll, there is nothing this side of, the Hall of Fame that can stop that pick and roll.
The only thing I'll say to that is, yes, a lot of it's math, a lot of it's matchups. But at the end of the day, even more than that, these guys are human beings.
That's true.
Yep, I'm just saying there is possible, and all of a sudden they start bickering. Like this team hasn't been tested in a long, long time. I mean,
I guess the ultimate question is this, and I'd like to ask both of you guys this, and I'll answer, I guess, after. Right now, who's winning the title, Golden State or the Field?
I still got my money on Golden State, but I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks. To me, it's been Golden State over the Field. Like I would have taken 10-1 money the last 2 years. This year, it's coming closer to even money in my eyes. I would still take Golden State, but I don't think it's nearly the foregone conclusion it has been the last couple of seasons.
I'm taking Golden State, obviously. I'd say I don't think there's a team that is as good as the Rockets were last year. But
I agree with that also.
I think OKC is close, though. I think that they're close. But I would also say that DeMarcus Cousins does make them better. And one thing about the Warriors, and the only reason they are who they are, is that Steph is great at getting guys to play with each other. So if he can get all of them on the same page in the playoffs, they're going all the way. And it's not even, they might win all of the games.
No, they're going to lose more games this year than they have in previous seasons. That I feel very strongly about because I do think teams like the Nuggets could go 4-2 against them. I think OKC is going to win 1, 2, maybe 3 games. I think the Rockets could push them. What are the Rockets 3-0 against them this year?
Yes, but Ryan, I'll say this, and I agree with your point about no one's as good as Houston last year. And you were on this more than I was, Ryan. You really were, driving the train that Houston has a puncher's chance against Golden State, and they did. They showed that they could compete with them. They're not the same team this year. And there doesn't really seem to be a team that you think can put up that puncher's chance against Golden State. You more think that it's because Golden State might not play as well. Am I correct there?
That, and I do like I like the moxie of this Thunder team. And I think in a big series that Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Steven Adams, Markieff Morris, Dennis Schroeder, Jeremy Grant are more hungry than these guys who are sitting there fat and happy, having been to the finals several straight seasons, kind of feel like they can cakewalk through the entire thing. And all you got to do is have points where things get contentious. Then all of a sudden they start thinking, Draymond starts yelling at KD again. And then maybe like the ball stops moving quite the way that it was. And they start playing hero ball a little bit more because they are better teams now. And again, maybe none of them are as good as the Rockets last year. But I think that the level of teams in the NBA right now, OKC, Denver, even the Utah Jazz, the Bucks, the Raptors, they're all better than we've seen from a lot of like the secondary teams over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I love what the Jazz are doing. You know that. They're not ready to beat Golden State this year, but I love what they're doing over there.
So, I don't know. I do think it's not as much of a foregone conclusion. And again, if I had to bet all the money I have, I would put it on the Warriors. And I really wouldn't even think that much about it. But for me, it's still the Field's got a better shot this year than it's had in a while. And it has nothing to do with talent because clearly Golden State is beyond talented. The most talented starting five we have ever seen.
Yeah, I get that. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's just no way I'm ever putting money on a team where I need Russell Westbrook to be clutch. Other than that,
well, if everybody seems to love Paul George, why can't Paul George be clutch in that situation? It doesn't have to be. That's where I kind of talk about with the Bucks. It doesn't have to be Giannis pulling up to take a 3-pointer with 13 seconds left. Malcolm Brogdon has hit a lot of big shots this year. Chris Middleton has done it. Even in the playoffs last year, hit multiple big shots against Boston. He can be secondary guys, and for a lot of people, Paul George isn't the secondary guy anyway. He's the star of this team now.
Yeah, I would just argue that your secondary guy, and that's how I'm looking at it with Russell Westbrook as a 2. I would argue that your secondary guy has to be really, really, really good because the Cavs don't win the 16 finals without Kyrie. He had 40 and then 40 again and then hit the game-clinching shot over Steph. And that's what I think the Thunder need Westbrook to be so good. Westbrook is a freak, man, but his mind is just not there. He's super good. And I don't want to take anything away from his actual skill on the basketball court, but sometimes his decision-making is just so poor, and it messes him up.
Yeah, I can't logically argue with that one, so I won't. All right, guys, I've got to head on out to go sell a car real quick, but I want to say thank you for coming on here today, Andrew.
Yeah.
You guys can check him out at NBAoverview.com. I will put a link to the website down in the description section. Go give it a look. If you had fun, we'll have you on here again soon to talk a little bit more NBA. And other than that, guys, anything else to close with, fellas?
That was awesome.
Sure. Colin Sexton, Rookie of the Year.
I love Colin Sexton. I'm glad you brought him up because he's not rookie of the year, but people want to say he's a bust, and he's having a better rookie year than De'Aaron Fox last year.
Dude, he's fast, man.
Yeah.
He's speedy.
There we go. He's not rookie of the year, but he's not a scrub either. Fair enough. I'm with it. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.